Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, Team Phoenix. Welcome to the show. Welcome live on screen on YouTube Live or LinkedIn Live. Maybe you watched the recording. Also, a very big welcome. Today we want to talk about cultural understanding, and with me is Yo Lee. She's Manager Solutions Consulting at MuleSoft. Please give us an introduction. Who are you?
Sure. Well, super happy to hear. First, thank you, Patrick, for the opportunity. So my name is Yo. I'm a solution engineering manager at MuleSoft, and actually my whole pre-sales career has been with MuleSoft. So it was my first pre-sales role there, and after 3 years, so last year I transitioned to the manager's role, and it's been a very exciting journey. Met many brilliant people like yourself and Melissa, who nominated me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So that's really interesting. So that means you've worked in the field at MuleSoft for two years, and then you switched into management. What's the main difference for a solution engineer? So maybe there are people out there who say, I want to join management roles. What's the difference to the field?
I think it's really the change of perspective. So you're still really engaged into some of the opportunity because your team talk about it with you. But today you're really taking the point of view of an outsider there at the same time. So I think that is really cool that you're kind of looking at the same job from different perspective. So I do feel if I go back to the solution engineer role, I would be a very different solution engineer because of this different experience. So I think that is really interesting.
It is. I mean, give me this insight. What would you change now that when you know management? So maybe is it executive connections you would build earlier, or sell on different levels, or don't sell tech? So that's really interesting. What would you change?
Yeah. So I think probably two areas. One is as pre-sales, day to day, you actually don't work with your colleagues that much. And by being a manager, I actually get to see a lot of pre-sales in action. And that just gives me so many inspirations. I just feel there's so many more things I could learn from people in my team and outside my team, no matter what is their level of experience. So I think that is definitely one area. I will just pick a lot of these things from people I see through their meetings. So that's one. And I think the other one is being the manager role, you kind of need to distill yourself from the specific opportunity and think about the structure of how you approach a deal, etc. And so I think going back to the role, I will be a much more disciplined SC as well in terms of doing the right thing, qualification, making sure where exactly we are, what do we have in place. And so these are the things I was aware of, but being the manager role really just strengthened that understanding, and you just see a lot more opportunity in volume as well. So I think going back, I would also be a much more structured SC.
Yeah, that sounds like you sneaked into different opportunities, got the secrets right, learned a bit, and then and I mean that's a big thing for managers, right? So you can coach like different practices that you see working with other people in your team, or
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. That sounds great. A very basic question I need to ask you: why are you a sales engineer?
Okay, so I think initially how it started was really that I saw this role could address a lot of skill gaps or things I don't get to do in my previous job. So, for example, I would really need to step up my communication. It will be a client-facing role, and I will be able to understand sales in an enterprise environment, etc. So I was attracted to this because I feel I had some foundation for doing this role, but at the same time, there's a huge amount I can learn in this. And then after a couple of years in this role, I do feel there's a lot more I can continue going in it because the learning is really never ending. It could be the technology, it could be your soft skills, etc. There's many dimensions you can explore further into in this role. So I think that's where I started as a sales engineer, why I started, but also why I'm happy to continue staying in this area, even though manager role and now, but still I'm very immersed in this environment day to day.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the explanation. So, hi, Kyle. Good to see you, Kyle McKay. Great insight so far.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's, Bartholomeus. Let's see what he wrote. Switching from individual contributor to people manager was like a second puberty for me. So many things changed profoundly in thinking I could not imagine before. Wow.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I mean, puberty means like our brain rearranges everything, right? Is it really that profound? I mean, from your perspective? Does it go really deep?
Yeah, I would say it is a change in a quite deep level because it really broadens your horizon. And previously, when you are individual contributor, of course, you try to do the best you can. But day to day, what you can see is just that much. And it's very your own style as well. And but coming out of this role and you see more of others and at a greater scale how things happen really shift your mindset.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Bartholomew, thank you for your insights. So, and he also says everybody should have this opportunity. And this is an interesting one, maybe to lead over to our cultural theme, right? As a leader, do you think leadership is different in cultures? I mean, maybe this is a good leap over to our topic that we want to discuss. Is there something you would say to leadership in terms of culture and the differences?
Absolutely. So what I want to talk about is culture. It has many different aspects or different skills you can look at to see how different culture can be different from each other. So leadership is one key factor in place. So really different cultures can be varying from hierarchical leadership to more flat structure kind of decision made bottom up kind of leadership. So that is something can vary significantly.
And do you have, I mean, you switch into leadership, do you have something ingrained that you maybe took from your culture? So style, I mean.
I would say actually I've moved so a little bit myself in terms of my own cultural profile, pop cultural background is I grew up in China. So I spent probably the majority of my life in China, and then I moved to UK 10 years ago. So there is a strong influence of the Chinese culture on me. But at the same time, there are many factors that it just changed over time. It could be not everyone will perfectly fit their cultural profile just based on where they come from, who their family is, where they grow up. But there's also element of your experiences will also shape how you act and how you behave in those aspects. So I grew up in a very hierarchical culture, and generally growing up seeing it in school and hearing what people are talking about. That's what I grew up with. But quite curiously, I did this profile test with my team, and I did it myself. And turns out I am the least hierarchical person in the whole team. So I guess that's a strong evidence that people do change, and where you come from doesn't necessarily shape your profile as well. But then comes to, since everybody is different, why should we know about these culture differences, right? Since everybody individuality should be appreciated. But I think so that really comes down to even though everyone is different, but culture is a strong element in the day-to-day. So having that awareness give you that perspective that is different from what you have. And while you respect the individual differences, but that awareness of how culture could be different help you see that others might have different reaction, different understanding, different style of communication. So I think that awareness is still really important.
And what's the? I mean, you said right there. You're different from based on your background and your culture. What are the benefits you bring? You're not working in China, right? So you're working in the UK.
That's right.
What's the benefit you bring given your background, given your difference? I mean, maybe compared to a typical Londoner, for example, or European person.
Yeah, I think there is that element of I'm able to flex my style more.
Okay.
Because transitioning between different culture, I had my phase of observing, feeling confused, and imitating, etc. And that's how you find kind of your own identity in a completely different way, different culture, because you need that to effectively communicate with people in a different culture to be understood as well. So I think because of the environment change, I was forced to be able to flex my own cultural style. But because I did that, I think that allows me to be more sensitive how I can best communicate and interact with others when they are all different.
That's great. It raises two questions for me. First, let's see if we can cover them. First, would you say you have two cultures? and second, is this still authentic? So I hear this word very often. People, especially sales engineers, want to be authentic in front of the client, right? So do you have two cultures? First question. Do you think you have two cultures with your flexing? Is flexing a word for that?
So I think probably I can act in different cultural styles. So this cultural influence basically determines what is your habitual way of doing things. And when you are well versed in different culture, they both are your habits. I can easily, well, at least I think, maybe in reality, sometimes it's not always the case. I can change that style. So for example, when I'm talking with my with family, friends in China, and how I talk with colleagues, friends here, it can be very, very different. So that's probably the first question. And then, is it still authentic? I do think it's still the same you. It's really about choosing different way to engage, but that does not challenge who you are at the core. So it's more like a technique or different approach to doing things, but you have the same motivation, you have the same thoughts, you have the same idea to share. So it's not really changing identity that way. It's you're still authentic, but you're just choosing the most effective way for different audience.
Nice. Great explanation. I have follow-up questions, but I will get Melissa in first. Hi, Melissa. Great to see you. Melissa, you actually, there's you nominated her. Melissa wrote, this is super interesting. I wonder, how do you think growing up in different culture and moving to the UK and becoming a manager gives you a different perspective when it comes to hiring employees from different backgrounds? Wow, that's diversity at play, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's great. Great question, Melissa. What do you think, you?
Yeah, I think that is basically being open-minded about the different way people present and talk about things. So I think this is a good steer into one specific cultural factor. I think is very important in hiring and also in day-to-day role of pre-sales is how do we persuade others, right? So in pre-sales, you persuade your prospective customers that this is the most beneficial way for you to address your problem. But then as manager, when in a hiring scenario, I am being persuaded by people who wants to tell me that I am fit for this job. And that is one observation I had is how it can be very different from different cultures. So in this book called Culture Map, we talk about two different way of persuading. One is principle first. So that is basically about you get to things, the fundamentals of something, and you get it in principle, and then you apply it. The other mode of persuasion is application first. So you start by doing, you give specific examples and help the audience to understand it. So these two different way of persuading, how it applies in recruiting, is that we a lot of times hear people say that when you're answering a question in interview, you have to give an example. So the thing there is really the application first. I would not be convinced unless you give me a concrete example. But the other way of thinking, people who have the persuasion first mindset, they would think, I will give you how I would operate in this situation. This is my principles navigating in this situation. And I am laying out the fundamentals, but it might be different in different scenarios. So I'm just giving you the principle. And sometimes this kind of answer can be penalized down for not having substance if you're just using the application first thinking. So going back to what Melissa asked, I try to keep a balance of that, right? If people are just giving me principles, I can specifically ask, do you have examples? And if people give me an example, it's not broad enough, I can explore it further to stretch the application first kind of thinking. So yeah, that's how, this is a small example of how it can influence us. And but I think it is very important to recognize that people with different cultural backgrounds operate differently, and it's not necessarily always your way of being persuaded or persuade others.
Yeah, you're right, and it makes me think how you could persuade me. Like I don't know. I think you are right. It's a mix of principle and application based. But what I immediately thought about is storytelling, right? I read a lot of books about how to write and storytelling, all these kind of things. And it feels like it's more application based when you write in terms of persuasion. So story convinces you more, and it's a concrete application But here's the point of principles, right? So it will never work without the other, at least in writing. My feeling right now, yeah. But it might be also, the books I read might be culturally different to maybe a Chinese book on storytelling, right, or writing. It's really interesting. It's really
and it can be used in combination, right? I would say storytelling could be universal, no matter what kind of thinking you apply, because it really makes things more memorable. And so you can use it in combination, storytelling combined with application first examples, or the other way around.
Yeah. Let's go through the chat for a second. There's Kid. Hi. Good to see you. So many familiar faces. Exactly. Good to see you. Wait, there was Melissa first, then Jonathan. Melissa, wow, that's really good answer. Principle first versus application first. Something that sounds valuable for any interviewer to understand. Yeah. I think this is really good. I think we understood principles of persuasion now, right? Yeah, and maybe interviewing is an application. Cool. There's Jonathan also. Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you. I noticed if someone from an application-first culture. Oh, before I read on, what's an application-first culture? Do you have an example? So is there a map, like there's application-first culture and principle-first culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So different countries falls on different place of the scale in terms of if it's application first or principle first.
Where's Germany?
I quickly bring it on the screen. So this is the figure from the book. Let me make sure I choose the right tab. Okay, here we go.
So wait, I need to add this to the screen. There we go.
So here you can see maybe the fonts are slightly small. So on the left, it's the principle or concept first cultures.
Okay.
And so those are like Italy, France,
Germany.
Germany.
Argentina. Okay. And what is on the... Oh, the US is application first. Okay, that makes so much sense. Oh my God.
Yeah. So US is the most application first culture, according to this here. And we probably all feel it day to day to some extent, especially if you are working in an American company, etc. And I think another very interesting example is UK and US, the two countries on the right, are the two countries that use common law. And while other countries are using civil law and or something in between. So what I mean is the common law in UK and US is precedence based. So previous judgment will be applied to the immediate case. You go back to history, you look at what examples, what applications was done previously, and you apply it into the immediate one, the one you're dealing with. While the civil war is more principle driven, and it looks at the principle to make those judgment. So I think that is probably one good example of how countries on the right hand side of the scale use that application first into some of the things that could significantly affect our day-to-day life. And I would like to do a test on you as well, Patrick.
No.
Yeah, let me stop. Actually, I don't stop the screen here for now. So when you were in school, when you are in school, when the teacher is teaching about the triangle, the angles of a triangle adds up to 100 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember how did that come together?
Yep, I remember Pythagoras, right? So I don't know how to pronounce it in English, Pythagoras or something, this C sentences, so a square plus b square equals c square. That's what we learned. Is that what you ask?
Yeah. So they add up to 180 degrees.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you remember if you had to figure out why was it 180 degree first, or you were given the formula first and you practice on it and then go back to the principle? Which one was it?
Yeah, it was more like a teacher, like, here's the formula, right, guys and girls, enter some numbers, calculate it, right? And we talk about, there is no real why or deep, it doesn't fit to the map, but from my understanding, I think we got like, here's what it is. We got some images, I think, and then they explained a bit around, but maybe I didn't get it.
Okay. So in that case, the way you were taught that was not really principle first, it was application first. You were given the formula, go ahead and test it out. Okay, so but Germany on the skill is more concept first. So generally, it should be an education structure that starts with the whys and then go to the how. And myself, even though China is not on this screen here, because a lot of Asian countries is not binary, it's holistic approach. But regardless, I think I am more principle first as a person. And I remember how I was taught in school was we had to figure out why it was 180 degrees first, and then we apply it. So that was really a kind of teaching that goes principle first, and then you apply it. And how we are educated at a young age has a big influence in the way our like natural way to persuade, to educate others. So that's why that culture can have an effect on someone later, and people act differently.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I had, maybe I still have it, like the habit of correcting other people, right? If I know something or if I hear someone saying something wrong, I say, no, it's this way because, right? So yeah, I think it's a bit ingrained. Maybe I'm working on that. So sorry for everybody I do this to. But I have a real revelation here. That's amazing. So the concept behind, the principle behind what you explain is really cool. So let's continue with Jonathan's question. So I noticed if someone from an application first culture, and we know now application first is more on the US side, asks you a broad question and you answer a principle first way, because that's your natural way of unpacking broad problems, the other person might think you're being too philosophical. Wow.
Yeah, so it come across as no substance. Because it's all these philosophical talk, right? And Jonathan from Italy is very much the end on the principle first.
Yeah, I've seen this even before Germany. That's crazy. I sometimes have this in my mind. So when I think about books, when I read books, I never really remember the concrete stories in the books. Like sometimes it's explained. It's more like, so I try to create like a pillar in the ground, right? So like, this is how things work. And then I try to apply it to other problems. Maybe this is now my revelation when you explained this. Maybe that shows that I'm principle based. Yeah, cool.
Exactly. And then making this really like, how is it relevant in pre-sales? Is because when I learned about this, it really gave me like aha moment of, reminds me of some of the interaction I had with customers, and you kind of get some cue from them that they're not quite getting it. Some of them might suggest to you that, oh, can you give me an example? And so now looking back, I realized, okay, so that probably means this customer I am speaking to is application first in the way to be persuaded. Or sometimes if you start with a specific like use case or something, and the customer might say, but how does this apply to the general problem I have? So that's when you think, okay, maybe I needed to bring out the principle first to talk about how broad this could address their challenge. And so I think this comes to the point that I feel it is so important in the SE role to know how your customer can be different in their thinking. And so you can take these small cues to adapt the different style of yours and to have the most convincing way for this customer.
Yeah. So in the US, I always need a demo. In Italy, I just explain my
about high level, and then you can still go into the demo. But another thing is, at the same time, you can't really assume the other person is gonna be of certain style either, because everyone is different, right? This map of reflecting different culture is just an indicator of the most likely case. So with the individual, you can't really assume it. And also in the world we work in today, you could have a room of audience from many different countries. So it's impossible to know upfront just based on that background. So it's really important here to have this awareness, so you can read the cue and you can really combine it as you go on. That's how I am seeing it. But if you're not aware of this from the first place, it might be a value of despair. Why I'm talking to this customer as if I'm talking to a wall. It's just not getting through.
Yeah, it's definitely a point to be aware of, and switching styles when things get stuck, right? And I love preparing questions for discovery. Like Melissa, we're talking about discovery. Everything we just said applies to discovery, right? And I never thought about, I think, application-based questions. Really, I think I always thought about principles, like getting to the issue behind the customer's issue. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's something great to think about even for prepare. And Melissa says, this is a light bulb moment for me. Great, thank you. That's cool. That's really cool. Let's see. Kyle, again, great discussion. In my experience, I found that having principle first and application first individuals on the same work team can be challenging at first, but results in great outcomes. Oh, that's an interesting one. How do we benefit each other, and why? And when doesn't it work?
So I think probably that combination. Well, from the first place, as you probably do need to give them the right message, right demonstration for these two different kind of individuals. But then it comes to we need champions, right? Selling to each other internally. So I think that could be also useful, that some can look at specifically, for example, how this immediate project coming up, this is really going to change the game for us. And the principle first audience could be thinking, these are the challenges that we have across multiple streams, and how this could help us. And they are thinking about it from different angle, but they are both saying the thing, that your solution is going to help them. So I'm seeing a potential of how having these two different type of individuals from the customer could help you be successful.
Yes, and if you think about your team, like you're managing a team of pre-sales or sales engineers, solution consultants, I think you have this in mind, right? Or maybe this person is more principle-based, this is more application-based. Can you get benefits out of this combination, or what are the benefits when you weigh this like in the right way?
So I am just thinking probably it's more than the example I'm thinking now. But when you have a diverse team with different approach, they will establish their own way of doing things. And so, for example, an application first person might have his way of doing demo, having great success in meetings, and the application first person might have a different way. Then the power really comes into when they talk with each other, learn from each other, because you are dealing with a diverse customer that can be using multiple, be on different side of the scale. And if you just use your own habitual way, it might not be always effective. So by talking to each other, finding out how the other person do it can just add on this cumulative knowledge there in place. And another interesting thing I read in the book is that everyone has the ability to navigate and in this different style can flex their own way. But it's just that awareness. When we just do things out of habit, you tend to be stuck in one certain way. So I think back to your question, in that case, when we have a team that has different style, we get them talking, share their experiences, and they will pick this significantly different approach from their colleagues, and they will be able to apply the same with the customers.
Yeah, great insight. I think that's amazing. The whole idea behind this is really cool. Roman, good to see you. Bonjour. He says, I now feel for my application first prospects being challenged by my numerous why during the discovery. There's the rule of 5 whys, right? So when you do discovery, you should go to the core of the problem. So you ask why.
And then your application first prospects might want more of the hows.
Yeah. So what happens to an application first person when I also always ask why? I mean, why is a bit intimidating too, right? So why didn't you bring the garbage out, right? It's like, it sounds like it's an offense some ways also. So be careful with that.
It could be, I have an immediate problem to address, but why are you digging so much? It's not exactly in the immediate scope. I just needed to know how to solve this immediate problem.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think Roman hits a very good point here. Be aware, right, that there are people that why is principle, right? Why do things work like this? That's a principle. Yeah, cool. And then how did it work, right? Cool stuff. Yeah, very interesting. You raised the point about people are different. Like, and this is something I really now think about. So I'm different to my wife, to my kids, to my parents, right? I'm a different personality, and I believe also in terms of application or principle based. But how does it come that the whole country is considered to act in a certain way? Like, isn't this just making people stereotype or?
So there is quite a few elements in place. It don't necessarily explain everything, but can give us some insight. So, for example, language, and in itself could be something having a huge influence in the way we communicate. And then the history can play quite a big role as well. So now I'm going to combine two concepts. One is this persuasion application first, and the other one is communication, a low context and high context style of communication. So low context meaning being extremely explicit, direct, straightforward with the message you have to say. In a high context culture, that's where you would focus more on the underlining meaning. You don't always say what you mean, or the message is hidden or not directly saying no. Okay, so there is one specific country, America, the US, it is application first, and at the same time, low context. So if you think about the culture of the US, they coming from a very diverse root of people coming from different cultures.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to communicate effectively, get to the point fast, they need to be very low in the context, in the style of their communication, and they needed to be very upfront and straightforward with application examples to start with that facilitate all of the communication. So that's why we see US being a very extreme case, being very low context and highly application first, and coming from its own history of having diverse culture. But then there's also the element of language as well. So English as a language, it has 7 times the vocabulary of French, which means you can be very specific about what a word means. Meanwhile, in many other languages, including my own, actually the volume of the vocabulary or characters is not that high. That means a lot of the meanings will be up to interpretation. It's based on context. So that language also plays quite a role into the communication style or the way we persuade.
Yeah. Language definitely influences how you think, right? The way you speak, the tone, the way you typically express things in a positive or negative way. They even like the gender terms, like son, for example. In German, it's female, and I think in Spain it's male, right? So there is I'm not sure about Spain, so, but and there is a difference in those things, and this is already influencing how you think, right? About your daily life, about the normal things. I heard about one tribe who they only talk in directions. I think I saw this on LinkedIn actually, and they can orientate like so well because they only talk in north. So my toe is north of your nose, like things like that, right? This is amazing. So language influences everything. I completely agree. Yeah. There's a post from Irina. Hi, Irina. Great content, absolutely agree. As a Russian in France, I have immediately noticed the difference at the university, and then at work. It was very challenging, but I think we can get benefits of such mix of approaches and learn to adapt to our colleagues and potential customers. Completely agree, right? I think that's similar to Susan Cain's Quiet, so the book about introverts. There's a study also that we can, it's called the free trade agreement. So we have a, like you say, flex area, like we have an area where we can step outside of our introvert self and be an extrovert. Like you say, step out my culture and actually step in, take the view of your culture, right? And this over the long term helps to build habits also in the other culture. And when you then learn the language, right, you ingrain maybe the culture. Maybe this is someone in the chat, someone wants to agree or disagree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Low and high cultures are very different. Sometimes a Russian compliment might be perceived as an insult for a French person. Give us an example. I want to hear this.
Yeah. And while Irina is coming up with an example, and I think like for someone who have this cultural awareness and or who transitioned through different cultures, this could be your superpower as pre-sales as well. Because if you really think about the role of pre-sale, there's something very unique about it, is the amount of people you are talking to day to day. Because, for example, a developer, you regularly work with a team. It's the same amount of people, right? And then if you're a consultant, you work on a project for reasonably duration. For pre-sales, you are every day talking to multiple customers, and the customer depends on your your deal cycle. This transition can be pretty fast as well. So that means, like in this role, you really get a huge amount of exposure to a big number of people and a very diverse audience. And I think this is one unique thing about the nature of pre-sales, not always talked about, is how much you are exposed to different culture, different audiences. And so having that awareness could really become a really superpower for you to navigate with different customers in different meetings.
Yeah. So do you think it's a myth? So it's sometimes in those movies, right? There is this hero, he works maybe in a European firm, needs to go to Japan or China and sell something, and is insulting the business owners because of some weird behavior and loses the business. How true is this? How close is this to reality?
I think that is definitely very true. So earlier we talked about when you're talking to individuals, we shouldn't make that assumption because individual can be quite different from their cultural profile. But when you're actually selling to a specific country, and that is not yours, I think you should really start with some of the awareness of how it can be different, because then you will be faced with a large volume of customers, people, and in that case, you will really feel how this culture scale really affects the way you do business. And I think a good example is how we build trust, right? It is completely different in Asian countries to Europe, or especially like in the US. So in Asia, trust is built by relationship. And meanwhile, some other cultures, trust is built by tasks. What you do what you say what you will do. And so that means if you are in Asian countries, you should cultivate that relationship. And if you don't build that relationship, it's going to be very hard to have that trust. And meanwhile, say in Europe, you can take your customer to lunch, dinners, and really spend time getting to know them. But if you don't do what you say, you're not reflecting on the task, you're still not going to gain that trust, because in this culture, trust is built on task. So I think in that kind of situation, when you are selling to a completely different country, instead of in a meeting room with people with diverse background, that's where you should really study into how it is different and be aware and really pick up as you operate from a different country. Yeah, but I think in Europe, it's also a very special case here, right? Selling in Europe, so many different countries, and each one of them can be vastly different from the other. And a lot of pre-sales are selling to the whole Europe market.
I think as European, if you have grown up here, you're lucky because you learn about the history of every other European country. So you kind of feel them, and you often learn the language, right? So I don't know. So Europe, I think, was okay. But there's another question in my mind when you spoke about the cultural differences, and this is again globally. Like, think of social media, right? How is this different? So what the goal of social media, like if you're an SE, you want, or a manager, right? You want to attract talent, right, for your team, for example, or as an individual contributor, you want to become a trusted advisor. Yeah. How does familiarity work? So, because basically what we try to do on social media, we want to be visible. People see us more often, right? And we build a relationship. That's the core idea. Is this now more like trust building? It's not on the task, right? Or is it if I share something like a helpful how-to? So how does it relate to social media? If I'm prompt building,
I think you can still build that task-based relationship on social media. by sharing experience, sharing insight. And so those essentially are tasks that you've done such thing before, or you've got exposure experience, so you have that insight. So maybe it's social media does allow you to do both. So you can share specific insights, sharing examples. Those are task-based tasks. But at the same time, reaching out to people, saying hi, and commenting on what they talked about and how you feel about that. Those kind of interaction would be trust relationship.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it this way. Yeah, but maybe you're right. It helps you to do both, right? Very good. Do you have? I have a question that I like to ask about mentors. So we talk a lot about culture. Let's talk a bit about you again. Do you have mentors, and how do you find them? I think that's often a big one for new starters or people who want to grow. Do you have an advice for us?
So I definitely have mentors, and for example, Melissa is here, and she is my number one mentor, especially when I started. And I definitely wouldn't be able to achieve what I achieved in my role without her help. So definitely, I had plenty of mentors along the way, and I think I find mentors probably one is it's a clear relationship, right? This is signing up to a mentoring program. There's plenty of those at MuleSoft and Salesforce, and then someone will mentor you. So, for example, since I started the manager's role, I've been mentored by Mira, and she's based in the US. You probably know her as well. She's been with MuleSoft for quite a while. So Mira, through a program, she became my mentor. But then there are mentors for me in life that we never called it a mentor relationship, but I see it that way because when I have problems, challenges, I go to them and they give me advice, guidance, and so they are still my mentor. So coming back to Melissa again, when I started, she was my buddy, so it was assigned mentor. But since she moved job to a different company, and I still go to her when I have questions, and I still really very much see her as a mentor, but it's not that kind of structured program mentoring.
Yeah. And mentoring, how important, Melissa, I got her in, right? I learn more from you, though, she says. That's great. How important is a mentor from a different culture?
Yeah, actually, I haven't thought about it, but now thinking about what I gained from people, quite sometimes I asked them questions that are culture related, or the fact that I am puzzled is rooted in culture as well. So definitely huge factor. And now I'm thinking it's super important to have a mentor that is from a different culture than you, because they would really help you see things from a different lens and give you that insight you don't necessarily have right away.
Yeah. And that leads me actually to a follow-up question. How does culture actually influence our happiness and success? Do you have an opinion on that one? Because what I have in mind, I lived for a decade in Munich, and Munich, there are a lot of people like working from all over the world, right? It's really global, but I had the feeling people from other cultures were sometimes really unhappy in Germany. I don't know why, but I saw them just sitting in the subway, right? And there was never really quiet, unhappy faces, like nothing that I would think is inspirational. Right? So that's why your opinion on that. Does culture influence happiness? And if I'm exposed to a different culture,
Yeah, I think it can go both ways depending on the attitude you take. Really,
okay.
if you feel you are stuck in a different culture, that basically means that you struggle to communicate with people, to build trust with people, to persuade all these elements. It will become challenging, right? If you feel you're stuck in a culture that is different from you, I would imagine that to be very difficult.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, and I personally, really interested in culture. And so today we talked about this and on Culture Map. And I also like to read things about history, cultures, and I even read things about my own country by people from different culture, because I just feel
Yeah.
it's so interesting to look at what I'm so familiar with from a different perspective. So when you come from an attitude like what the way I look at things, I think it just gives you more enrichment, and it brings me happiness and hopefully success too.
Very good. And maybe there's a trick if I'm unhappy. So mind experiment. I'm moving to China. And I'm not very happy as a German there, so I failed to communicate. What if you were my mentor? What should I do?
um, I would say really forget about how you think things should work,
Okay.
right? To just fully embrace it as is. And in fact, a lot of foreigners who not foreigners, just people from like Western culture countries, probably when they go to China, there is a saying that you either love it or hate it. There's no middle ground. And when it is so extreme, then you would think there is some deterministic factor in place
Yeah.
to lead to such opposing consequence. And I think that is the mindset of you willing to accept that it is different. This is the way it is there. Or you try to apply the same model of where you come from and expect it to work the same in a country that is on the other side of the planet. And that's where that is going to lead you to misery. And I think this would apply whichever direction you are heading in the world.
Yeah. No, great. Yeah, I think it has to do with again with growth or fixed mindset, right?
Absolutely.
The thinking like, can I change? Do I believe I can change, or do I believe I'm a stone, right? And my traits are given and not changeable. Thank you very much so far. I have one last question for you. I love this because I always ask this. It's very personal again. Let us know who you are. Give us 2 tips or hacks about anything.
Okay, I did have a think about this before the call. I think one hack for me would be get a cat because I yeah, two probably is even better. And I was not a cat person, but
Okay.
4 months ago I got this a little kitten, and
Oh,
he brings me so
oh,
much happiness that I did not expect. And I now realize, okay, cat is seriously underrated. I just love him so
don't
much.
eat them. No, sorry.
Yeah, so get a cat is my number one hack. And then number two is a little personal. It's
Yeah.
something I do with my partner Jonathan. Is that 2 or 3 months ago we decided to each one of us will fully own the cooking for a week and then
Oh,
rotate to the other person. because we were constantly arguing about who's cooking tonight, because neither of us are big fan of cooking. And also sometimes I am a very picky person with food. So sometimes he cooks something and I don't like it. And I usually do the shopping and I don't get the things he needs for cooking. So it was a disaster. But now we are deciding, okay, one person fully own it each week. You
That's
buy
interesting.
what you need, and whatever he brings on the table, I have to accept it, because I'm going to start for a week if I don't. And it works wonders. I'm really amazed at how much it changed our life positively.
Nice. That's great to hear. So there's often pizza and pasta on the table then?
Actually, he doesn't cook pizza or pasta, so I always wonder if I have a fake Italian at home.
Okay. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, dig deeper there. Okay. Thank you very much. The time is over. Let's check. There's one more comment. Ownership is power. This is a very good last comment. Anything you want to say before we leave? Any last sentence?
Yeah, I think just really thank you for giving me the platform, and thanks for the to the audience for your engagement and
thank you everybody.
Comments.
Yeah, that was amazing. So many questions and good and deep insights. I love it. So thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel there. Give us a like, add the comments. We will see them afterwards also. And with that, well, we're a bit over and we're out. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.